Have you ever imagined standing in a place where mountains rise straight out of the sea, not as separate realms, but as one continuous body of stone and salt water? Where water doesn't just fall, but seems to weep endlessly from cliffs that were shaped not by years but by millennia of silent, grinding ice. Where the silence feels less like an absence and more like a presence vast, patient, and deeply listening. Have you ever wondered what it would truly feel like to step away, not just from the noise of routine, but from the very idea of hurry, away from crowded streets and the constant, anxious motion of modern life, and travel instead to a land where time itself seems to breathe slower, and every view feels not just seen but received, as if placed there intentionally for you to find? Welcome to episode 2 of our ongoing series, A Journey Around the World, Nature's Most Breathtaking Places. Today, we don't just travel north. We travel into the north, into a geography of the sublime. Today, our journey begins in Norway. Norway on the map. The context of stone and sea. Norway is located in northern Europe, anchored to the western flank of the ancient Scandinavian peninsula, like a great stone ship facing the Atlantic. Norway stands firm against the open sea. From above, its shape becomes clear, long, narrow, and stretching endlessly along the North Atlantic Ocean. A nation drawn by the line of the sea. It is bordered by Sweden to the east, a land boundary of forests and lakes, and by Finland and Russia to the northeast, where the land begins to soften into the Arctic vastness. But on nearly every other side, it is defined, embraced, and carved by water. This is not a short acquaintance with the sea. This is a long, intimate, and often tempestuous marriage. A connection measured not in centuries but in geological epochs. And this eternal conversation between rock and water has fundamentally shaped Norway's geography, its climate, and most profoundly, its identity. Norway covers an area of more than 385,000 square kilometers, a space larger than many nations. But to speak of this land in terms of square kilometers is to miss the point entirely. Much of this territory is defined not by human marks, not by cities or towns, but by the primal signatures of the planet, mountains that scrape the sky, valleys sunk deep by ice, rivers that are the veins of the landscape, and a coastline so complex and fractured it seems to tremble on the map. To understand Norway, to feel its pulse, you must first understand its fjords. To call a fjord a valley filled with water is like calling a symphony a collection of notes. It is technically true, but it misses the music, the scale, and the quiet force behind it. A fjord is not just scenery. It is memory. Memory written in stone and salt water. Long before villages, before roads, before even forests covered these valleys, Norway belonged to ice. Enormous glaciers, not small rivers of frozen water, but walls of ice hundreds of meters thick moved slowly across the land. Not flowing like water, but grinding, pressing, carving. For thousands of years, they pushed forward with silent, unstoppable weight, scraping mountains, crushing rock, excavating the earth itself. Valleys deepened. Cliffs sharpened. Entire landscapes were sculpted by nothing but time and pressure. And then, the world warmed. The ice retreated. Slowly, quietly. And what it left behind were vast, empty scars in the land, deep U-shaped valleys stretching from the high mountains all the way to the sea. The ocean saw those empty spaces and filled them. Cold salt water rushed inward. The valleys drowned, and the fjords were born. Today, when you stand at the edge of a fjord, what you're really looking at is the work of an ancient ice age, a geological story written on a monumental scale. Sheer cliffs rise almost straight out of the water, sometimes more than 1,000 meters high. Waterfalls spill down their faces like silver threads. The surface below lies so still, it reflects the mountains perfectly, like dark glass. Everything feels larger than life, but unbelievably quiet. There are no city sounds here. No traffic, no rush, only wind, water, and the distant echo of falling streams. Time behaves differently in the fjords. Minutes stretch, breathing slows. Even your thoughts seem to soften. You don't just see the landscape, you feel held inside it, as if the mountains have closed gently around you, forming a vast natural cathedral of stone and sky. And this is where Norway truly begins. And once you truly feel that beginning, Once the silence settles in your chest and the scale of stone and water reshapes your sense of size and time, you realize something else. Norway is not defined by one single view. It is a collection of places, moments, landscapes that each tell the same story in a different voice. Some whisper, some echo, and some rise so dramatically from the water that they feel almost impossible to belong to the same planet. To understand the fjords, we must step closer to them, name them, stand inside them. And among all of Norway's countless inlets and drowned valleys, one name returns again and again, spoken with quiet awe: Geirangerfjord. When we speak of Norway's fjords, one name rises like its cliffs from collective memory: Geirangerfjord. Located in the sun-starved, waterfall-rich west of Norway, this fjord is not merely famous. It is archetypal. It is the fjord of which postcards dream. What defines Geiranger is not just beauty, but a drama of verticality. Its cliffs do not simply rise. They soar, they vault, they launch themselves from the dark water towards the low-hanging clouds. The waters themselves are narrow, winding, a serpentine path of profound blue squeezed between walls of living rock. And on these walls, water is perpetually in motion. Waterfalls, dozens, hundreds of them, stitch silver threads down the rock faces. Some are permanent residents born from high snowfields that never fully melt, flowing with the steady patience of centuries. Others are transient artists, appearing only after rain, cascading with temporary, joyful abandon. Some descend gently, veiling the stone in a fine, weeping mist. Others commit to the void with the full force of gravity, crashing onto boulders below with a roar that echoes like distant thunder. The perspective here is everything. From the dizzying viewpoints high above, like at Ernestvingan or Flydalsjuvet, the fjord reveals its true nature. It is a deep blue, surgical incision into the landscape. It looks like a vein of liquid sapphire, laid into a tapestry of green moss, gray stone, and stubborn, clinging vegetation. The scale becomes abstract, breathtaking. But descend to the water's edge, board one of the small ferries that are the lifeblood of this place, and the abstraction collapses into awe. Now the cliffs tower. They loom. They reduce your vessel to a floating leaf. The sky, framed by these stone giants, no longer feels like an open dome, but like a narrow, precious ribbon of light far above. Human scale is irrelevant here. You are in the domain of geological time. And so movement here adapts. It becomes ritualistically slow. Boats do not speed, they glide. Their engines hum at a respectful murmur. They leave behind not wakes, but soft, spreading ripples that distort the mountain reflections for a moment before the perfect glassiness returns. The journey itself becomes the destination, a silent, slow-motion voyage through a hallway built by ice. Just a mountainous breath away from Geiranger lies its counterpoint, Nærøyfjord. If Geiranger is the dramatic aria, Nærøy is the intimate chamber piece. It is one of the narrowest fjords in all of Europe, a place where the landscape leans in close to whisper its secrets. Here, the sensation is not of soaring height, but of profound closeness. The walls feel near enough to touch. The mountains do not just stand apart, they lean inward as if in confidential conversation across the water. This narrowness creates a unique play of light. The sun, when it finds its way down this stone corridor, paints not in broad strokes but in sharp, moving slashes and pools. The water, sheltered from wind, becomes a near-perfect mirror, reflecting not just shapes but every subtle shift in color and cloud. A doubled world, one real, one liquid. Then there is the fog. It does not merely appear here, it drifts, it settles, it performs. It rolls in soft, silent tendrils through the fjord, swallowing the peaks, softening sharp edges into vague suggestions, blurring the line between water and air, stone and sky. In these moments, Nærøyfjord undergoes a metaphysical transformation. It sheds its physicality. It becomes a timeless, dreamlike space. It feels primordial, as if you are witnessing the world not as it is, but as it was moments after creation, still soft-formed and breathing moisture. It feels as if it has always existed exactly in this state of hushed, vaporous beauty, and promises, silently, that it always will. Amidst this overwhelming geology, life persists, not in defiance, but in delicate adaptation. Clinging to the scant ledges and rare patches of flat land along the fjord edges, you find the human footnote, small villages and solitary farms. These are not imposing settlements. They are humble accretions of wood, often painted in the traditional hues of oxblood red, mustard yellow, or stark white. Colors chosen not for whimsy, but for their ability to stand out against the snow, to seal the wood against the relentless damp. They sit quietly, almost apologetically, on the land. They do not compete with the landscape. They inscribe themselves lightly upon it. For generations, stretching into centuries, people here have lived not on the land, but with the fjord. Their rhythm is set by its moods. Life here is a logistical ballet with nature as the choreographer. Fishing is not a pastime. It is a dialogue with the deep, cold waters. Travel is not by road, but by boat. The fjord is the highway, the main street, the connection to the world. And there is a deep, ingrained respect for the limits of the terrain. You cannot force a road through a vertical cliff. So, you adapt. You see it in the infrastructure, roads that cling like precarious threads to cliff faces, carved out at immense effort. Tunnels, some single lane, dark, and dripping, that pass directly through the heart of mountains that refuse to be circumnavigated. Bridges that leap across narrow points of water, elegant in their simplicity. Every human intervention here feels considered, necessary, and secondary. It is all designed with one core principle: to coexist with a power greater than yourself, not to control it. The fjord allows passage. It does not grant dominion. As our journey pushes deeper into the Norwegian interior, a subtle but monumental shift begins. The fjords, those great saltwater inroads, start to widen, to shallow, to fray at their ends. The dominant, still salt water yields to the liu dong of fresh water. The wide, navigable channels narrow into the urgent flow of rivers. The sheer, intimidating cliffs soften, slumping into gentler, green-clad valleys. And always, on the highest peaks, visible as distant, sugar-dusted sentinels, the snow remains. It is the reservoir, the origin point. This snow, under the weak Arctic sun, performs its slow miracle of transformation. It melts, droplet by crystal droplet. These droplets gather into trickles, trickles into streams, streams into torrents. This is the primordial pump, the engine that drives the next act of Norway's story. It is this relentless gravity-powered movement of water, from frozen solid on a mountaintop to liquid river to the waiting embrace of the sea, that draws us forward. It pulls our gaze upward from the still fjord depths to the dynamic, crashing, falling world above. It leads us, inevitably and beautifully, to the next chapter of our journey, where water takes flight. To the waterfalls of Norway. As the fjord's embrace loosens and the land reclaims its authority, the landscape undergoes a slow-motion metamorphosis. The sea's influence retreats, its salt replaced by the sweet, cold taste of meltwater and rain. This is the realm where freshwater asserts its sovereignty. A powerful, defining contrast emerges here, painted across the vertical face of the land. On the peaks above, winter holds its court, an empire of snow, ice, and biting wind. But in the valleys below, spring and summer wage their gentle rebellion, a carpet of green grass, wildflowers, and the hum of insects. This is the tension, between the enduring cold and the insistent warmth, between the frozen stillness of the heights and the liquid motion of the descent, that fractures the landscape. And from that fracture, life and sound erupt. This contrast is the creative rupture that gives birth to one of Norway's most iconic and soul-stirring features. Not lakes, not rivers, but the moment where water surrenders completely to gravity. The waterfall. Norway is a kingdom of falling water. It is home to tens of thousands of waterfalls, from anonymous, seasonal trickles to thunderous, world-famous cataracts. Many have no name. They appear suddenly around a bend in a mountain road, a silver surprise against dark rock. Or they hide, whispering, in the deep folds of remote valleys, known only to the streams that feed them and the moss they keep eternally wet. They exist here so prolifically because Norway's very anatomy invites them. The land is elevated, tilted, wrinkled by ancient forces. Its mountains are steep, offering no gentle slopes. Its climate is generous with its gifts of snow and rain, ensuring the supply is never-ending. Here, water is always in a state of potential energy, always just a cliff edge away from kinetic release. Water, in Norway, is never more than a step from a fall. The waterfalls of Norway possess a character distinct from their tropical cousins. These are not the warm, lush, cold, jungle cascades shrouded in vapor. Norwegian waterfalls feel colder, sharper, more elemental. Their water is born not from tropical downpours, but from the high, slow death of winter, from melting snowfields and the bleeding edges of glaciers. It is water filtered through a mile of mountain stone, infused with minerals, and carrying in its very molecules the bone-deep cold of the heights. Some of these falls are seasonal performers. They swell to roaring bridal veil majesty in the spring and summer thaw, then dwindle to a mere melancholic sigh in the frozen grip of winter, sometimes freezing mid-fall into fantastic sculptures of blue ice. Others are perennial, fed by the ancient ice of glaciers that, like slow-motion rivers, never cease their grinding delivery of meltwater. They are the steady heartbeat of the mountains. One cannot speak of Norwegian waterfalls without bowing to the mighty Varingsfossen. Located on the austere, windswept edge of the Hardangervidda Plateau, this is not a waterfall you simply see, it is one you experience in your diaphragm. The setup is a masterpiece of suspense. From the plateau above, the river, Jostedalsbreen, flows with a deceptive calm, a wide, placid sheet of water moving with purpose but no particular hurry through a rocky landscape. You walk alongside it, the air crisp. Then, without fanfare, the earth ends. The solid ground simply drops away. And the water, with no warning, follows it. It plunges 182 meters in a single, breathtaking, free-falling leap into the shadowy maw of the Mobadalen Canyon below. The water doesn't just fall, it explodes into atomized mist halfway down, creating a permanent, rainbow-kissed cloud that hovers over the abyss. The genius of this place is in its staging. Viewing platforms, seemingly daring extensions of the cliff edge, allow you to stand in the throat of the phenomenon. You feel the deep, subsonic vibration of all that tons of falling water through the rock beneath your feet before the sound, a tremendous, low-frequency roar, fully reaches your ears. Below in the canyon, the sound doesn't just echo, it multiplies, compounds, becoming a constant, primeval thunder that bounces between the ancient rock walls. It is the sound of the mountain itself speaking. Further west, nestled in the Flom Valley, lies a waterfall of a different character. Jostedalsbreen. Here, nature is framed by human ingenuity. Jostedalsbreen is intrinsically linked to one of the world's most beautiful railway journeys, the Flom Railway. As the small red train climbs the impossibly steep gradient from the fjord to the mountain, it slows to a crawl at a specific curve. The reason fills the window. Jostedalsbreen is sheer, violent power. A tremendous volume of water crashes down a two-stage drop, pummeling the black rock with furious white energy. The spray creates its own weather system, drenching the viewing platform and often painting rainbows in the mist. This waterfall is not contemplative. It is spectacular, theatrical. It demands your attention with its raw, auditory assault. The train stops for precisely this, to let you feel the unmistakable, humid energy of the cascade, to hear its roar over the quiet hum of the electric train. It is a moment where the journey pauses, and nature takes the stage for a commanding, unforgettable performance. But to focus only on the famous names is to miss Norway's true, quiet voice. The soul of this land is equally found in the countless unnamed, unseen waterfalls. The thin, silver thread that slips down a distant cliff face, visible only when the sun hits it just right. The wide, trembling curtain of water that appears for a few days after a heavy autumn rain, turning an entire rock wall into a liquid tapestry. The temporary, joyful falls that emerge during peak snowmelt, living for only a few weeks before fading back into the damp stone. These anonymous cascades are the landscape's constant, quiet work. They remind us that in Norway, water is never idle. It is always in transition, always moving from high to low, from solid to liquid, from silence to sound. They are the ephemeral poetry written on the margins of the epic. Now, the journey pulls us north, The forests thin, the days stretch or disappear, the air grows colder, and the land reveals its final, most extreme face. Above the Arctic Circle, Norway sheds the familiar rhythms of day and night and enters a different cosmic tempo. In summer, the sun performs its most famous trick. It refuses to set. It dips toward the horizon, paints the clouds in rose and peach, then rises again without ever having departed. This is the midnight sun. For weeks, the sky remains in a state of perpetual, soft twilight noon. The light is horizontal, golden, magical. It casts long, impossible shadows at midnight. It gilds mountain peaks at 2 a.m. Time loses its anchor. Then the pendulum swings. Winter brings its opposite, the polar night. The sun disappears entirely below the horizon for weeks. But this is not utter darkness. Instead, the sky moves through a slow-motion palette of twilight colors, deep indigo, velvety violet, muted pink, bruised blue over snow. For a few precious hours around noon, the blow time, the blue hour, illuminates the world. Blue shadows on white snow. Everything is still. Everything is waiting. Time feels suspended. The hustle of day and the rest of night are both absent, replaced by a deep, contemplative stillness that permeates the soul. And as the hours of twilight deepen and the frozen world holds its breath, the horizon itself begins to change. A jagged line, faint at first, starts to etch itself against the remaining light, a silhouette that does not belong to the sea. It is the first whisper of a new landscape, rising from the iron-gray waters of the Norwegian Sea like the fossilized teeth of a primordial sea dragon are the Lofoten Islands. This is not a gentle landscape. It is a spectacle of violent beauty. The mountains here are not merely high, they are sheer, jagged, and abrupt. They launch themselves from the ocean in spear-tip peaks, the famous Lofoten Wall with barely a foothold between rock and wave. Their forms are stark, graphic against the sky, like the archetypal idea of a mountain drawn by a mythic hand. But here, in the lee of these stone giants, human life persists in pockets of defiant color. Fishing villages, rohrbuer, cling to narrow strips of land. Wooden cabins painted in ochre red, sunflower yellow, bone white. These colors are not mere decoration. They are a historical language. The red paint made from cod liver oil and iron oxide protected the wood from salt and storms. Against the monochrome winter world of white snow and black rock, these settlements are beacons of warmth. The contrast is breathtaking. Nature here is dominant, overwhelming, almost arrogant in its power. The human presence feels careful, earned, humble, a testament to the stubborn ingenuity of those who learn to read the moods of the sea and the shelter of the cliffs. You don't conquer Lofoten. You find a crevice within it, and you are grateful. And then, above these stark northern lands, on a clear, frigid winter night, the ultimate celestial performance begins. The Aurora Borealis. To call it a light show is a sacrilege. It is something older, more sentient. It begins subtly, a faint green smear on the northern horizon, easily mistaken for a wisp of cloud. But then it wakes up. It pulses. It becomes a living, breathing entity of light. Waves of luminous green flow across the darkness like silent tides. Sometimes ribbons of violet or faint red stitch through the green. It can appear as a slowly twisting ribbon, a flickering corona overhead, or a dancing vertical curtain that seems to rustle in a solar wind you cannot feel. The science is known. Charged particles from the sun, captured by Earth's magnetic field, exciting gases in our atmosphere. But standing beneath it, in the profound Arctic silence, the science falls away. It feels spiritual, personal, awe-inspiring. It moves not with the jerky speed of human creation, but with a slow, fluid, organic grace. It swirls, billows, and melts like luminescent smoke. In its most active moments, it feels as if the sky itself is breathing, and you are witnessing the inhalation and exhalation of the planet's soul. It is a humbling reminder that we live on a small, fragile sphere adrift in a vast, electrically active cosmos. Every journey through Norway, no matter how far inland it ventures, is ultimately a journey that leads back to water, to the sea. This is the alpha and omega of the Norwegian story. Norway's coastline is not a simple line on a map. It is a fractal masterpiece of impossible complexity. Stretching for over 25,000 kilometers, it is a border that refuses to be straight. A labyrinth of countless islands, hidden coves, deep-cut inlets, and protective skerries. This isn't just geography. It is a defensive maze built by geology, a sheltered highway for life and for humans. The ocean here is not the warm turquoise bath of the tropics. It is the North Atlantic and the Norwegian Sea, cold, dark, nutrient-rich, and fiercely alive. Its coldness is its fertility. Upwelling currents bring nutrients from the depths, fueling one of the planet's most productive marine ecosystems. Beneath the surface, a hidden forest sways, giant kelp forests. Their brown fronds flowing with the currents, creating underwater cathedrals that shelter a universe of life. Fish, crabs, anemones, creatures that glow in the deep. Above, the sea teems. Massive schools of herring and cod move like single, fluid organisms, their migration patterns the ancient clockwork of the north. And where the fish gather, the predators follow. Orca and humpback whales breach in the fjords. Above, seabirds by the millions. Puffins, gannets, sea eagles circle and dive, nesting on sheer cliffs where land and air meet in a violent, salty kiss. For the Norwegian people, this relationship with the sea is genetic. It is historical. It is vital. It is not a resource. It is a partner, a provider, a sometimes tempestuous god. For centuries, fishing was not an industry. It was survival. Navigation was not a skill. It was sacred knowledge passed down through generations, the ability to read the waves, the winds, the bird flights, the subtle changes in the water's color. The sea set the rhythm of life, the timing of journeys, the very menu of existence. Everything here, from the design of the boats to the location of the villages, moves with an intention born of deep, respectful understanding. There is no rushing the tide. There is no arguing with a storm. You move with the rhythm of the ocean, not against it. The pace is set by the swell, the wind, and the long, patient wait for the fish to return. So what, in the end, is Norway? It is not a land of excess, of sensory overload, or of cheap spectacle. It does not overwhelm you with noise, speed, or grandiose artifice. Instead, Norway is a profound and patient teacher. It is an invitation, a gentle, insistent invitation to slow down, to observe, to truly see. It asks you to notice how the basic elements of our planet, water in all its states, stone of all ages, the patient growth of wood, and the transformative magic of light, exist not in conflict, but in deep, ancient, breathtaking harmony. From the deep, silent fjords carved by the departure of ice giants, to the thundering waterfalls born from winter's slow collapse, from the ancient, rounded mountains that are diaries of Earth's youth, to the forests that grow with patience measured in human lifetimes under skies that can be endlessly bright or deeply contemplative, from the Arctic realms where light itself becomes the story, to the cold, generous, defining sea that whispers at every edge. Norway reveals its sublime beauty not through shouting, but through a whisper that resonates in the bones. It shows that majesty is not about size alone, but about proportion, intention, and connection. Here, everything belongs. Everything is in conversation. The river speaks to the fjord. The glacier feeds the waterfall. The forest grows from the soil made by the mountain. The midnight sun illuminates the sea that feeds the birds that nest on the cliffs. And nothing feels forced. Nothing is out of place. It is a landscape that feels complete, resolved, and deeply, inherently true. It is a reminder of a scale and a pace that our modern world has forgotten. The scale of geology, the pace of a growing tree, the rhythm of a melting snowflake. Norway is not just a place on a map. For those who journey through it with open eyes and a quiet heart, it becomes a landscape within, a calibration for the soul. If this journey through silence and scale has moved you, if it has offered a moment of peace or a spark of wonder, please share that feeling. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder of a slower, larger world. And to ensure you don't miss the next chapter of our series, subscribe to the Unscripted show. In our next episode, we make a transition of fire and rhythm. We leave the cold, vertical clarity of the north behind and travel to a land sculpted by ancient heat, primal beats, and a sun that hangs heavy in the sky. A place where nature doesn't whisper. It sings, drums, and moves with a pulse you can feel in the earth. A land of golden savannas, thunderous waterfalls of a different kind, and nights alive with the chorus of life. Join us as we trade the fjord for the Rift Valley, the pine for the acacia, the aurora for the blaze of stars undimmed by any city light. Our journey around the world continues.